I just wanted to remind you that when we are discussing matters like this, we have to remember that these people have been turned over to a reprobated mind. I had mentioned that in one of my previous videos. At this point, when you're arguing with somebody or somebody is being overly aggressive with you, somebody is backing you into a corner, just doing things ungodly, most often than not, it is an actual demon working through that individual. Most of the people that exhibit those types of behaviors are being oppressed by demons. So you need to remind yourself that they probably have been turned over to a reprobated mind, and you need to pray for them to the highest, okay? Because you can't fix some of these people. Some of these people don't want to be fixed. And the only thing that can fix them is the highest, okay? But yeah, reprobated mind. I hope by now that some of you realize or are beginning to see that most of the negative interactions you have with people are actually encounters with demons, okay? There's a lot of people out here. I would probably say about 93% of the population has some entity or low vibrational being attached to them. And the problem with that is a lot of people don't realize what is transpiring, okay? A lot of people in the population tend to have negative thoughts frequently throughout the day that influence their actions, okay? So that in and of itself should be an indication that there is an underlying issue, okay? Because God, Yahweh, does not install or influence negative thoughts or feelings to entice you to act a certain way, okay? Those are not from the heavens above, all right? That's all I'm trying to say. But some of your negative interactions that you're having with people you're actually talking to demons. So recently, my mom, I try not to get into people's business, just for the simple fact I am understanding the gravity of the situation with sharing energy with people, places, and things, okay? I'm to the point where I don't want to shake hands, I don't want to hug, I don't even want to engage in conversations with people that are unnecessary, okay? And when I say unnecessary, I mean, hi, how are you? How's the weather? You know what I mean? Because it's an energy exchange. But so I try not to get involved in things that are not my business. However, my mother 3 days ago, took her dog outside and found a note from one of the neighbors. Of course, it was anonymous, basically threatening. It comes off as threatening, okay? Very passive aggressive, all right? But the note basically said, stop feeding the squirrels now. And this individual went to the extent of gathering old shells, and I'm talking about 6 to 8 month old shells that were left from the squirrels around the complex, and she or he put them in a bag and decided to put them on the ground, on the floor mat, the doormat, okay? So in addition with the letter and the nuts, I arrived at my mother's house the following morning to take her to an appointment, and I saw the note, all right? So my head told me to go put it on the neighbor's door, all right, her next door neighbor. So just think about a cube, okay? She lives in like a condo complex. And that's a whole other issue in and of itself, okay? But basically, I put it on the neighbor's doorstep, and I took my mom to a doctor's appointment. Well, I thought, I was thinking during the drive that maybe I need to say something, because my mother is in her 80s, okay? She doesn't have the energy or the capacity to mentally handle high anxiety situations like that, So I decided to text the neighbor that I left the note on the door, and I began a conversation with her. And I basically told her, you know, my mother and I put the 2 and 2 together. You know, one of the other neighbors in the same condo complex put her unit up for sale about, I'm going to say, almost 10 months ago or so. And that particular woman and my mother were feeding the squirrels and the birds, you know, putting bird food in the bird feeder, you know, just doing little things like that, okay? You know, it's nice to see some wildlife here and there. But since she was selling this unit, the neighbor that I left the note on the door instigated a confrontation with my mother about the shells. She went and told my mother that she needed to pick him up, and that kind of started, just how she approached my mother with the situation started a whole other issue. And a little bit of the backstory with this. First of all, you know, what happened to minding your own business, okay? This particular neighbor was saying, you need to pick up the shells, you know, she needs to sell her property, it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing, blah, 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 all right? Which I understand. However, why do you care, you know? But a little bit of backstory. That particular neighbor moved in with her husband while my mother's husband was still alive, and he had dementia and he was declining. So the neighbors decided just to help my mom out here and there. Well, when my mom's husband passed a couple years ago, there was a huge miscommunication about a funeral for my mom's husband, okay? The neighbor assumed that my mother would tell her, and my mother assumed that she would ask when the funeral was. My mom didn't even know if she was going to do a funeral. It was a very last minute decision. She decided to do it. Nobody showed up because, like I said, it was a last minute thing. She had intended on just cremating him and leaving it like that, okay? But she went ahead and did a funeral, right? Well, this neighbor was not informed of the funeral. So I had actually texted this neighbor the day of the funeral, and I asked her if she was going, and she said she had no idea that there was a funeral taking place, okay? So, you know, I think the miscommunication, you know, I was really taken aback, to be honest with you, that my mother didn't say anything to her about the funeral, okay? Because I was just blown away that my mom didn't say anything to her, because she was, you know, talking to this neighbor every day. It didn't make sense to me. But I get it. It was last minute or whatever. But anyways, that started a underlying tension between the interactions with my mother and this particular neighbor, okay? And my mother snapped at the neighbor. I guess the neighbor rang the doorbell and made my mom's dog bark all crazy. And, you know, my mom snapped at the neighbor. She said, you know, not to ring the doorbell, and you know my dog's gonna go crazy. But I mean, it just, that whole situation with failing to communicate began to spiral out of control. So when the nut situation happened, this particular neighbor started slandering my mother in the whole complex to anybody that would listen, okay? So my mom has had probably 4 or 5 random people, some of these people she doesn't know, come up to her and say, we don't want this nuts here. This isn't appropriate. Mind you, this was like 6 months ago. So my mom took the hint. She got it. She stopped feeding the squirrels. That neighbor that started this little fire with the whole nut thing, letting everybody know, gossiping, was not aware that my mother stopped feeding the squirrels like pretty much 2 months after that happened. So my mom hasn't fed the squirrels in about 4 to 5 months, okay? Because my mom doesn't like getting attacked like that. We're trying to leave to go to appointments or whatever, and we have random people coming up and berating us about nuts. Like, you know, the nuts decompose, the shells decompose within a year, okay? But I understand the whole, you know, the neighbor basically told my mother that it's illegal to feed wildlife. Okay. My mother did not know that. So with that information being shared, she did make the decision to stop, you know, putting nuts out. So fast forward to now, 4 or 5 months later, my mom gets that note on the door, and it's written in capital letters in red, all aggressive, okay, anonymously, by the way. So I decided to write on there, welcome back to elementary school. You know, if there's an issue, instead of leaving a note on the door, you should knock on the door or leave some type of contact information so we can discuss the issues, you know, and handle this like adults, okay? Well, I don't know if these people knew that my mom had cameras or not, but we found out that it was the boyfriend. So my mom's neighbor lives next to her, okay? And then across the breezeway is another woman that has small children. I think like, you know, 10 years old, between 8 and 10 and between 13 and 15-year-old kids. They're both girls, and this woman is dating some guy that looks kind of homeless, but whatever, you know, who knows, you know, some people have rough jobs, I get it, right? But yeah, so that lady's boyfriend, and I think it was both of her kids, came and left the stuff on the door and the nuts on the floor, okay, in front of my mom's door, all right? So essentially, you know, it's hard to tell. That mother is like 4'11", and her kids are a little taller than her and shorter. And they all look identical, you know? That's some strong genetics there, all right? But it's hard to tell who is who. And I was just looking at still shots. I will definitely put those up so you can see what I'm talking about. But my first reaction to seeing this is my mom's neighbor, with a miscommunication about the funeral, started talking about my mother and basically coerced the neighbors across the breezeway from her to leave this note on my mom's door, okay? So I'm the type of person, you know, if you want to be anonymous about this, I'm going to tape it. I'm going to write what I'm going to say on the back of this note with the nuts in a bag, you know, and tape it on the railings so when people go throw the trash away, they can see it. I saw a few neighbors reading that, you know, but I did go knock on that woman's door, and I told her the same thing. You know, if there's an issue, you can come and talk to my mother and I. Like, my mom doesn't bite. I don't live here, but you know, I think this is highly inappropriate that you're going to come and leave a note like this, an aggressive, passive-aggressive note on my mother's door when she's 80 years old. Like, dude, come on now, man. We're never going to get this situation isolated and nullify, you know? I think nullify is a word, right? But, you know, she's thinking, I'll talk to my girls. No, you won't. You won't. Because you're probably the one that influenced them to do it, okay? Your kids are over there playing with this woman's puppy. You know, she's sitting there gathering information about you and, you know, dropping little seeds of doubt about all the neighbors that she doesn't like what they're doing, and you're blindly following the leader. You know, these are flying monkeys. This is narcissistic behavior. So when I was texting this woman about the situation, I laid it all out for her. You know, I don't personally play these narcissistic games. They are demonic, and, you know, manipulating conversations, manipulating how people view other people is a form of witchcraft. And you know what? I let her know that. Because clearly somebody has not said anything, you know, and I told her I am inclined to think that you were the one that instigated this entire situation, because I have seen you do this with other people. Okay, there is a gentleman that lives in my mother's complex that has a enormous dog. Okay, and I've had to reflect on the entirety of the situation, because when we had first seen this dog, I was outside, you know, walking my mom's dog and whatever, and that neighbor that had the communication issue with my mother was outside with another dog that she had, and we just got into a small, oh, hey, how are you doing, bullshit conversation, and that woman brought up how big this gentleman's dog was. And I had said, you know, one of my friends had a dog like this at one point. This was 12 years ago. And it being a wolf hybrid, I told this woman I thought that they were illegal, right? But I'm basing that sentence off of the fact that my friend from 12 years ago had this dog, and she lived in Denver. Well, my mom doesn't live in Denver. So, you know, I think this woman misconstrued what I said. So as a result, she took it upon herself to basically slander this guy who's minding his own business, okay? To everyone that will listen, this poor man has had the police called on him dozens of times because of the dog, okay? The sheriff has been out there numerous times. Clearly, if the dog is not illegal and an issue, the dog would not still be in that community with an HOA, okay? So this woman is just instigating problems with people and gathering up all these, you know, flying monkeys and whatever, you know, but I had told her in the text messages that I don't play these narcissistic games, okay? She had told me like a few weeks ago that the guy with the wolf hybrid, okay, she said that he was outside of her house with the dog and he started peering into her windows, okay? And she was trying to portray the situation like a peeping Tom type situation, okay? When this gentleman is just minding his own business and taking his dog for a walk, okay? But she said I had to go get my husband, and my husband had to come out, and then we just got into a huge argument with him, and oh my gosh, I cannot believe this just happened. And I'm sitting there registering what she's saying, you know, kind of, oh yeah, oh my gosh, that's crazy, you know, just saying small responses like that while I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to reflect on this later, all right? But she ultimately played the victim with the situation, and then she began telling others that the same thing. He was looking in her windows and whatever, and oh my gosh, he's just a threat here. And, you know, I basically told her in the text message that she instigates an issue, and then she plays the victim, and then she tells other people what happened when she gets a reaction from the person that she's directing her energy towards, and then she gaslights, plays victim, and begins a smear campaign, just like what she's doing with my mother right now with the nuts, okay? So I did let her know that her actions are a form of witchcraft and she is dabbling in them, and I just wanted to share this entire situation with all of you, because at the end of the day, a demon is influencing this woman to make the decisions that she is making, okay? This woman is married, and when she had initiated the conversation with me about the neighbor peeping in her windows, her husband was standing right there, and he said, oh, but you know, he's really nice, he's a really nice guy, and the dog is really good. Yeah, you know what? The dog is trained probably better than you are. You know, but this is a classic Jezebel Ahab situation. You got a gentleman here letting the woman act a fool, basically, and he just backs it up because he probably doesn't even know what to do. Okay, if you are in a situation like this and you're married to somebody like that, that person will be going to hell. And you're enabling the behavior, so they are going to take you with them. You are making an idol out of your spouse if they do this type of behaviors, okay? You are on a slippery slope, and that is all I wanted to say about this, okay? You need to be aware that a lot of people are not happy within themselves, okay? A lot of people seek to destroy because they feel inadequate, okay? And I'm the type of person, like, when you talk to me, I ignite something in people. You either like me or you don't like me. And if you don't like me, it's because I'm mirroring what you lack within, okay? That is something that you need to work on, because I am genuinely a nice person. But with situations like that, you need to start calling out this demonic ass behavior, because these people, will destroy everything and everyone that they encounter. And you know what? I told that woman, I know to myself, a friend to all is a friend to none. Okay? What she did to my mom, she will do to other people. And all these little flying monkeys she gathers up to, you know, spew even more negativity on the victim, basically, can be going to hell too. Okay, you are partaking in demonic activities. This is not a time to play around with eternity, okay? This is about to collapse, and people need to understand that this is a spiritual WAR, okay? And this is spiritual warfare, 100%. I've seen a lot of this. My whole life has been this, okay? My testimony, the permeation of narcissistic indoctrination is my testimony. I have had situation after situation happen to me that people can learn from, okay? And this type of stuff, I called her out on the behavior because somebody needed to say something to her. Is it going to change? No. But am I going to be the target from here on out? Probably. So what you need to do with people like this, if you know somebody like this, if one of your neighbors is like this, start documenting everything that they're doing. I don't care if this woman sees this video. And you know what? I have some of the neighbors on my pages. Okay? We're going to find out who's who at the end of this. All right? Because that woman is talking to everybody, and she will throw everybody under the bus too to make herself look better. That's a dangerous human being to be around with her bug eyes, okay? I see the demons because of the bug eyes behind some of these people, and it's a specific entity too. You know, I have been blessed to be able to see some things that I think some people are not ready to process or handle, okay? But if you've ever looked at like Schmeagol in Lord of the Rings, most of these demons, especially this one, look like that behind the eyes, okay? The big bug eyes sticking out like that. No. I've seen that in my dad's wife, his second wife, not my mother, his second wife. Yeah, these demons are operating through people. Some of these people, I don't think are even human, okay? And a lot of these people are like NPCs. When you're an NPC, these entities can jump in and out of you, all right? Everybody needs to just be very mindful about what they're doing. They need to be mindful about what they say. We need to just protect our energy at all costs, because these things are harvesting our energy. They do not deserve a reaction, okay? So I just said what I said and left it at that, but I did call the police. And let them know, hey, look, this is a borderline harassment situation. The neighbor coerced the other neighbor to leave a note like this, and it is inappropriate, 100%. If you get documentation with behaviors like this, I would keep records, okay? Because it's not going to be one type incident. It's going to be multiple incidents. I would start documenting interactions with other neighbors and stuff too, all right? If you are in a situation like this, or even family members. This has already happened to me with my family. How I was alienated from my oldest child growing up. This right here is what was happening to me, okay? I know this pattern like the back of my hand, and I will call it out every time I see it, and you got to rebuke that. That is a demon, okay? But I just wanted to jump on here and make this video real quick, because I know this is happening a lot, okay? You're not alone, and you're not crazy. I would highly recommend that people start researching, you know, narcissistic patterns, Jezebel, Ahab. You need to start really digging and getting into your Bible, because a lot of the stuff that's in the Bible is occurring now, okay? That Bible was written to help you. You know, you've got to seek the kingdom of God first, and everything will be added to you, all right? He starts giving you more clarity in your mind. He renews your mind so you can renew your body, so you can renew your environment. So then you can identify these toxic patterns so you can maintain that homeostasis within your environment, okay? But, yeah, I might give an update on this situation, because I know it's probably not over. But at least, you know, she was contacted by the police. And at least I am a direct person, and I let the neighbors that were involved know, okay? I don't play these games. These are our games. These are childish, evil, demonic games from weak people. All those flying monkeys, are weak. Okay? They are. Because no one seems to ask more questions. Okay? And honestly, if these people sided with this person automatically, they were people that you don't need to associate with to begin with. Okay? But yeah, I just wanted to jump on here and throw that out. Yeah, sorry. I've been sick, and then the fires in Colorado, the smoke, dude. Like, I have just been a hot little mess here. I will be uploading another video. I'm going to try to start working on that video. I've been kind of sitting on it. I'm trying to go in chronological order with the things that have happened in my life, just so it's easy to follow. But yeah, I've lost my voice. I just got over being sick. I did do a chemical peel over like 5 days ago, so I'm like peeling right now, like on my chest, neck, everywhere. So if I look more wrinkly or old than I normally do, it's because of that. So I thought I'd throw that out there too. But you gotta take care of yourself, drink your water, you know, stay away from toxic people, man, because they will suck all the goodness out of you, man, like a little sponge. All right, stay away from people. I mind my own business until I can't anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like these energy vampires is what they are. Low vibrational energy vampires that have nothing to do but start some stuff. And I'm going to keep it real with you. You don't want the smoke that I will bring with the fire behind me. Because you know what? I bring the fire and the fury of the Creator. All right? We are not playing games anymore. God is not. Yahweh is not playing any games with any of this anymore. This is not appropriate. People are not acting right. This is not right. People should not be oppressed by demons. We have the authority to bind them and send them out, okay? And people need to tap into that. If you can tap into that, that is going to be the best thing you can ever do. You need to seek Him first, and He will give you this clarity to see all of this, what other people don't see. And then once you check those demons, once you start really checking those demons, those people look like a deer in the headlights. They don't know what to do, all right? They needed to have something said. Because you know what I've noticed too, aside from people either liking me or not, like when people see me, man, they automatically have to reflect, okay? They do. And they don't. And a lot of them are not ready for that, okay? They see what they needed to be in me, all right? But you can be that too if you take the time out to do it, all right? But yeah, here's that. So I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Yeah, I will upload as soon as possible. Yes, thank you. Bye.